Why is the Yoga Sutras an important text for today's context?
Yoga Sutras is an important text for any context. It's timeless. And the reason why it's timeless is that the Yoga Sutra fundamentally talks about the psyche, how the psyche works, what happens to a person who does not understand one's own psyche properly. Okay, the consequences in terms of illness, the consequences in terms of lack of ability to see the world, and various aspects of a psyche that is not functioning perfectly. Right? The only thing a man has to live from is one's own psyche. And if that psyche is not working clearly without distortions, obviously one's life is going to be full of problems. It's a timeless text. It's simply about how the human mind works.
How does one engage with the text? Is it to be blindly or dogmatically followed, or is there a more wholesome way to engage with it?
First of all, it's not a text in the way you look at other texts. It's a set of almost formulaic statements. They're sutras. Okay? Each sutra is supposed to be less than 7 words. So it draws out the essence of a human behavior. It draws out the essence of the way the psyche works and gives you a single line. Yeah? Like the first sutra, na? After saying Atha Yoga Anushasana, Yogaha Chitta Vritti Nirodha. It's a very well-known line. It's a simple line which simply says that yoga has to do with the psyche and how the disturbances of the psyche end. Right? Now, this is not a text. This is just a line. Your commentaries might go for a number of pages, but the commentary is not supposed to be taken as is. It's just an indicator. So you and I in our lives have to start exploring what this statement means. And what is it that disturbs my psyche? How does my psyche come in the way? And so on. And if I do not do this exploration, and if I do not take the Yoga Sutra as a starting point of an inward reflection, it's a useless statement.
So I have to internalize it, or I have to engage with it in a way that...
You have to look at it as a mirror. You have to look at it as a mirror and see what it's telling about me. Right? So in my way of looking at it, understanding the sutra is a secondary issue. Understanding my own self through reading the sutra is the primary purpose of the Yoga Sutra.
So what does the inner work through yoga exploration involve? The course that you have put together around this?
See, in my understanding, the Yoga Sutras were not taught like in a classroom. Yeah, a set of words and explaining the words. Because it is referring to an inner world. Right? So my speculation is that the Upanishads, for example, are not just a set of lines. Right? Each Upanishad, if you just print the Upanishad out, will only be 4 or 5 pages of written text. And every Upanishad starts by saying that so-and-so came, met a rishi and had a few questions. And the rishi says, come and live in my ashram for 5 years, 11 years, whatever. Right? What were they doing for 11 years? Or 5 years or 6 years? There would have been a lot of interaction. Right? A lot of observation. A lot of dialogue. Right? And like a person today would go to somebody for counseling or something like that, one can imagine that all of these were happening. And here is a person growing up, encountering life, and having a teacher to come back and dialogue with. So, how is it possible to recreate some flavor of this dialoguing process today? So, what I have done is work with the idea of using drawings, using discussions with people, and taken from my experience of working with sensitivity groups and encounter groups, identity groups, and brought it together, because my own learning of the Yoga Sutras was not just sitting in class with Krishnamacharya. Firstly, I was teaching at KYM, so there were a lot of interactions with Deshikachar and all of that. So it had a certain quality in a modern context of living in an ashram. I was in touch with J. Krishnamurti for that period of time, and with Pulin and Pulin Garg and process work. And I would constantly see the interactions between these three. So you listen to something that Krishnaji is saying, and a sutra pops up in your head, and you understand the sutra, not when it was told in class, but in this context, and suddenly something from inside kind of explodes, right? Or one is dealing with a process group, right? Dealing with my own confusions, dealing with my own life struggles. And as one untangles the knots, literally, inside, a Yoga Sutra's meaning just pops up, right? And to me, these ways of understanding the Yoga Sutra are obviously much more powerful, because then it's a process which is really embodied and not just from the head. And I really think the Upanishads and the Yoga Sutras are just a condensation and the final statements of a whole process of exploration, right? Therefore, they ought not to be taken as endpoints and shoulds and any of that, right? They are just directions for one to start exploring. They're actually deep questions, right? So, Yoga Chitta Vritta Nirodha is not an assertive statement of an endpoint. There's a question mark at the end of it. So, how does my mind attain a state of clarity? Is the question that is behind, or that's the real question that has to be answered when one looks at this sutra, and not treat the sutra as an endpoint. I don't know, I don't understand actually. I'm a confused mind. I'm looking at the sutra, and with what basis am I talking about a clear mind? I have no experience of it. So it has to be a question. How does one discover such a clarity of mind? And the moment you do this, you'll see that the rest of the sutras are all pointers of this kind. They're all questions that one has to ask of oneself in the context of life. So whatever I've put together is just enablers, helping people to be reflective. It's my attempt to offer people a way of doing dharana on their own inner processes, and not trying to intellectually understand the Yoga Sutra.
So it's connotative than denotative.
Yeah, if you want to use words like that, yeah, it's connotative. The entire Yoga Sutra is in the world of the connotative realities, where words can only point to something and nothing can describe the reality. It's a completely inward reality. So the words or the Yoga Sutra is just a starting point. And if I don't enter the inner world, the Yoga Sutra is just an intellectual statement.